Hello, good morning. I'm Samantha Simmons. I'm joined for the duration of the show by Rupa Huq, Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton. In a moment, Rupa, I want to ask you about ending this kind of harassment. The Met have pledged 650 new officers and new patrols to protect women and girls. Is this enough?
I mean, it's a depressingly familiar story, Samantha, and probably, every woman watching, you and I have experienced this as well. I think it's not enough to do reviews, reports, task forces, and the replacement of officers is just a load of officers that were slashed in 2010 anyway. We're not going to get back to where we were. And again, this sort of victim blaming that Mina Smallman, who is in your film, incredibly dignified, same with the parents and siblings of Sarah Everard this week, the unimaginable awful stuff their daughters have been through. We had a vigil on the town hall steps of Ealing for Sabina Nessa just a couple of weeks ago. A month earlier, we were doing it for the 1 year since Bieber and Nicole. I think we need a culture change. It's not just structural stuff like chucking money at it, more officers. Yes, we need more officers, street lighting, CCTV, all those things. But also, the problem is men. Sorry, I know we have one man in the studio amongst the three of us today. But those ingrained attitudes that it's just a bit of locker talk, it's a bit of a laugh, have to go. And it would start with things like education, relationship education, teaching kids respect in schools, but it needs to go all the way through. And just this is not on. We had a case, you mentioned your sister who was only at school when it started, Alice Gross in Ealing, and that ended in much worse. I mean, again, how many times do we have to have these roll calls of lists of women? I think the Commissioner of the Met also has a lot to answer for as well. That we need a complete culture change.
OK, well, let's talk more. Rupa, what would you say to Maya?
I think misogyny needs to be made a crime. I think we need to have a victims bill. It's shocking that 9 out of 10 rape cases never reach a criminal prosecution. And we've got a government that, although it gave us a police crime and courts bill recently, that attracted a higher tariff for graffitiing a statue than raping a woman, than killing a woman. I mean, their priorities are all wrong.
Those stats on rape cases are true, aren't they?
They're terrible. But look, just to be clear on the sentences, the maximum sentence for rape is life. The average sentence for rape is 10 years, and it's gone up by 2 years since the government came to office.
Why is there a 10-year sentence for defacing statues, Chris? This Rupert, really shows a wrong priority.
I think, to be honest, you are sort of cheapening the issue. That is a maximum sentence. The average sentence for criminal damage is a final community order. So just be careful about. Please don't misrepresent it. There's an important issue.
The rape conviction rate is 1%. It's shockingly low.
It is shocking.
Unacceptable.
Absolutely. No, you're right.
Well, Rupa, the Mayor of London thinks that TfL should take over the running of South East Rail. What's the case for that, do you think?
Well, actually, in my seat, we've got it used to be called Silverlink line, then it was North London line from Richmond to Stratford. That's been taken over by TfL Rail. I mean, those stations used to be quite scary, non-staffed places. It's a lot more functioning, reliable and integrated with the rest of the TfL network. So I think there's a good advert for it. And I think all this is a good advert for public ownership. Full stop, because as with the East Coast Main Line, I think this government has nationalised more railways than any Labour government ever did this century. In living lifetime, shall we say. So, I mean, they might as well nationalise the lot as soon as every franchise comes up. Because if you think about it, this is not even a good way of doing privatisation. It's a semi-monopoly. People have to sort of bid in for a franchise. It's not a good way of doing it. Time after time, they've failed. I think it's a good advert for public ownership.
Chris, it's hang on, I didn't interrupt. And Sadiq Khan has failed to do basic reforms, like introduce driverless trains, like reform the pensions, because he's scared of his trade union paymasters.
Rupa, come back in briefly, because we're running out.
It is the only public transport in a capital city on earth that has no central government subsidy, and that was George Osborne that took that away in a spiteful anti-London move.
It gets the business rate. It gets business rate retentions instead, as you well know.
OK, we'll come to this another time on another date. For now, though, thank you on that. The Prime Minister there talking to Tim Donovan, firmly standing by Cressida Dick. Rupert, Wayne Couzens got through the Met vetting process despite having exposed himself in the past. There have been many calls for Cressida Dick to resign. Where does the buck stop?
I mean, look, I think the Wayne Couzens thing, he's a monster, revolting that he used his police badge to arrest her and his police belt to asphyxiate her before Sarah Everard. It's a horrible, horrible case. But what I think is there's just too many coincidences that have happened under Cressida Dick's watch now. And I understand the argument that just changing the face at the top is not going to be enough. And, it's easy to personalise these things. But I think it would send a strong signal if she did go now. The buck has to stop with someone. In the olden days, people would resign when serious malpractice had happened. And from the John Charles de Menezes murder to the vigil earlier this year, when we saw pictures of women who went peacefully to gather to remember Sarah Everard being crushed underfoot by police, it was just horrible. I think she should have probably gone then. Just too many of these coincidences now to be just mere coincidences. I think she should resign.
Chris?
We've even seen this week, I think it was just, a couple of days ago, a woman that had been in a relationship with a police officer who'd actually duped her. She found that her human rights had been breached. He was spying on her because she was in a campaign group, and that bloke had done the same thing to 10 women over 7 years. That, again, doesn't build trust and confidence in the police force not having sexual predators. I understand majority of them won't be. But as I say, with the crush at the Wembley turnstiles in the Euros earlier this year, there just seems to be a long list of things you can construct that have gone wrong under this commissioner. And I think, she should go.
There we must leave it. Thank you. That is all we have time for. Bye.